How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Mother SpongeBob. That was today. It's July 2nd, 2021, and today we're obviously going to focus on now Hurricane Elsa, and it is now our first hurricane of the what likely will be a very long hurricane season. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather content. So let's begin by taking a look at the water vapor loop right now for Hurricane Elsa. And as you can see, this developed rapidly over the past several hours as this wasn't originally expected to become hurricane status, while most of the computer models were agreeing that this will mainly remain as a tropical storm, with some computer models thinking this could attain hurricane status, but now it has attained hurricane status, and right now it's around 75 miles per hour. And you see, based off of the water vapor imagery, it looks far more organized than it was yesterday. We're finally beginning to see convection on the western side of this storm, as the dry air wasn't enough to completely dry up or stabilize the air in the northwestern portion of the storm, as now we're seeing convection all around the center of circulation, which means that this will definitely develop a lot. This was bound to develop a lot more, and now it has attained hurricane status, and we do see that nice outflow, especially coming off the northern side of the storm, which shows that a lot of the air which shows that a lot of the air molecules in the upper levels of the atmosphere are having a good time getting out of the hurricane. And a good outflow is one of the things that's required for hurricane development, because if there's no outflow, that means that the air will be too stable for much more convection to occur. But we do see that outflow occurring in the upper levels of the atmosphere, which shows that this storm is relatively healthy at this point. And again, we're seeing a lot of convection all around the storm, which is a thing we were waiting to see before we could consider this any sort of major tropical storm or hurricane. And we have begun to see convection all around this storm, and the center circulation right now has just passed the Lesser Antilles, and by the way, it is moving quite fast at this point. If we were to take a look at the moving speed, you see it's moving west northwest at a speed of 29 miles per hour. To put that in perspective, most average tropical cyclones move through the main development region and into the Caribbean at an average speed of 10 to 15 miles per hour. So to see this move at nearly twice the speed, over twice the speed in some cases of the average tropical cyclone, shows that this is really moving rapidly. And that might be a good thing for Lesser Antilles, because this means that you'll be in hurricane-like conditions for less time, since it's going to move so quickly and less rainfall. So in terms of the future strength of this storm, so if we were to take a look at the wind shear as of right now, you see the wind shear is relatively light. We do see a little bit of stronger wind shear just north of Hispaniola and Puerto Rico, and we do see that green dipping down a little bit. However, for the most part, the wind shear is light, which has allowed this storm to develop over the past several hours. And I do think it is likely to continue as it heads further and further west northwestward. However, it does have this little obstacle right here. We do see the wind shear increase just a little bit just south of Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. So we're gonna have to wait and see if it'll be able to strengthen despite this wind shear. However, this wind shear is very light, it's far from strong, so there is a chance that this storm pretty much bypasses this wind shear and doesn't weaken at all, and in some cases maybe even strengthens, because the wind shear will be so weak. So the wind shear is quite weak for this storm, so gradual strengthening should be expected. But it's also good to point out that this storm is moving still quite fast, thanks to how strong the easterly lower level winds are. And if the lower level winds from the east are a little bit too fast, that means that the storm won't really be vertically stacked from the lower levels of the atmosphere and the upper levels of the atmosphere, which creates problems for tropical cyclone development, since the air molecules aren't really coinciding with each other, and which limits convection overall. So we need to wait and see if the lower level winds move fast enough to the point where it could weaken this storm. However, as of right now, it seems like the wind shear is just light enough, and despite the lower level winds going just a little bit faster than the upper level winds, which could create a little bit of wind shear, the thing is that it's not like the lower level winds are going against the winds of the upper levels. So the upper level winds and the lower level winds are going in the same direction. So even if the lower level winds are moving a little bit too fast, it isn't enough to consider it strong wind shear because they're both moving in the same direction. If the upper level winds and the lower level winds were moving in different direction, that would be a different story, and that would completely kill off the storm. But since they're going in the same direction, it's really helping enhance the storm, and it's certainly limiting the wind shear and the amount of obstacles this storm has to go through regarding wind shear. So as of right now, it seems like gradual strengthening is expected, but I don't expect rapid intensification because, like I said, the storm is just moving very fast, and I don't think that the storm will ever be perfectly vertically stacked at a speed like this. However, it eventually will slow down, and that's when things will get interesting. Now, in terms of the dry air with this storm, let's take a look at the relative humidity in the mid levels of the atmosphere. You see that the dry air is less than expected from the GFS model, because if I show you prior runs, there was a little bit more dry air just to the west of the storm. Let me go back to yesterday's run. You see that the GFS was expecting a little bit more dry air on the western side of the storm, but now it has diminished the amount of dry air that's to the west of this storm. So as a result, the storm has strengthened, and you could probably tell by the water vapor loop that the dry air isn't as potent as it was yesterday. So as a result, this was able to attain hurricane status, and based off of what I'm seeing, it doesn't seem like there's going to be much more dry air to the west of it, because the biggest obstacle when it came to dry air was through the Lesser Antilles, and how fast it was moving. That was another major obstacle. But now, since it has overcame one of its expected biggest obstacles, which was the amount of dry air just so west of the storm in the Lesser Antilles, and still strengthened, I do expect this to gradually strengthen before reaching Hispaniola, because if we take a look just so west of it, there isn't much dry air at all. The wind shear is relatively light, so I do expect gradual, slow strengthening, not anything rapid thanks to how fast the storm is moving, but at least slow strengthening should be expected with the storm before it reaches Hispaniola. And you might be asking, well, what about beyond Hispaniola? What about beyond the 2 to 3 day mark? Well, that's when it becomes interesting and a little bit more uncertain, because if we were to take a look at the relative humidity in the middle levels of the atmosphere, you see that the storm is still very moist in this area, and the dry air isn't much of a problem. However, what may be a problem in the future for this storm is the land interaction, because if it goes over any sort of land, it could completely I wouldn't say completely kill the storm because it's a little bit too strong for that to happen, but it could definitely weaken it significantly to maybe low end tropical storm status. And however, based off of what the computer models are agreeing on, it seems like, unfortunately, this storm is going to miss out on, well, I don't want to say unfortunately for those living in Hispaniola, but this storm is less likely to weaken since it's gonna avoid a lot of the land from Hispaniola, and it's expected to move just north of Jamaica. However, there's still that possibility it goes directly over Jamaica. So Jamaica, not only you need to watch this storm, but even beyond that, you guys need to watch if there's any land interaction, because if there is any land interaction, this could significantly weaken the storm. However, it seems like most of the computer models are agreeing that this will go over Cuba, and they do expect a little bit of weakening as a result of that. However, since Cuba isn't necessarily a big island, and it seems like the storm is going to go over a little bit of land in Cuba, it won't be, I don't think, significant weakening as some may have hoped. So as a result, based off of right now, it seems like the land interaction won't be a major problem when it comes to weakening this storm. But there's still that possibility it could move over one of these islands, and that could significantly weaken the storm. Because if this GFS model were just a little bit further northward, where it goes over Cuba for just a long period of time, that could significantly weaken the storm right there. So there's still a lot of uncertainty of how much land interaction this will face, and that will be extremely important in terms of determining the strength of this storm, going beyond the islands and into the United States. So it is something certainly to keep in mind over the next several days. And in terms of the wind shear, over the next several days, it's expected to be light. Like I said, for the most part, you see that in the GFS model, the wind shear is almost non-existent. The only wind shear is pretty much due to how fast the storm is moving. The lower level winds and the upper level winds aren't really coinciding with each other when it comes to the wind speed, but the wind direction is the same, so it won't be any sort of strong wind shear. Oh man, I wouldn't say it really encounters very strong wind shear until it reaches the United States, because by the time it reaches the United States around the 4 day mark on Tuesday, there's going to be an upper level low dipping down into the southeast, and that's when the storm could encounter a higher amount of wind shear, which is certainly good news. That could certainly weaken the storm before it potentially makes landfall in Florida. However, for the most part, the wind shear will be light, as really the key to determining how much this storm will strengthen is really the land interaction and how fast the storm will move over the next several days. Because if it continues to move fast, that will put a cap when it comes to its max potential when it comes to wind speed. So we just need to wait and see and determine how much land interaction this will bring and how much wind shear will be in the United States, because that will certainly determine the strength of the storm. However, the current consensus is that this will remain a Category 1 hurricane until, I'd say, right around Cuba, before weakening to strong tropical storm status right around Florida. That could easily change, and there's still a lot of uncertainty, but as of right now, the most likely scenario is that this remains a hurricane for the next several days before weakening and maybe being strong tropical storm or low end hurricane status by the time it reaches Florida, but still a lot of uncertainty. So we need to keep in watch of the forecast. Now, in terms of the track, there's still, while we're not that far from landfall in any of these islands or even the United States at this point, there's still uncertainty regarding the landfall of where exactly this will go, because as of right now, while the GFS is still persistent on bringing this storm on into the Gulf Coast and impacting the west coast of Florida, the European model still is forecasting that this storm will move into Hispaniola and move and pretty much drift into the open Atlantic, avoiding Florida, which would certainly be the best case scenario. However, I noticed that the trend from the European now is that the European is now bringing this storm and this cyclonic vorticity further eastward than it was yesterday. So this could mean that the European model is sort of playing catch up with the GFS, because the GFS all along was not only expecting a stronger storm but a westward track, and it seems like the GFS model is winning when it comes to its forecast, because the GFS model was much more lenient on strengthening this type of storm than the European model is, and the GFS model is a little bit more experienced when it comes to, is a little bit more reliable when it comes to a storm like Hurricane Elsa. So as of right now, it seems like GFS model would be the more reliable track at this point. And if we were to go by that, while the strength of the GFS model I think is a little bit lower right now, and I think it should be updated, because right now the storm's at 995 millibars, but the GFS in its forecast is predicted that this will be 1,002 millibars. So this storm is a little bit stronger, which means that the forecast might be a little bit off when it comes to strength, as I do expect it to be a much stronger storm, and we need to wait and see where the computer models update when they realize that this is now a hurricane, because that certainly could change the track of this if it knows exactly where this goes, the strength of this. So in terms of where the computer models want to take this, we see the GFS ensemble member is still persisting on majority of the computer models taking this into the Gulf of Mexico, while the European model, while yesterday the ensemble was more in agreement that this will go into the Gulf of Mexico, now it's taking a track further eastward and it's avoiding a lot of the United States, which would certainly be the better case scenario. However, again, it's also good to keep in mind that the European ensemble member was forecasting a weaker storm, so it could be a little bit more inaccurate, while the GFS model was forecasting a stronger storm, and that is what happened today. And so as of right now, it seems like GFS model is the more reliable model, but again, we can't disregard the European completely just yet, because the European model is still extremely reliable model and could be right even when the GFS model disagrees. So there's still that possibility it still moves just east of Florida and avoids land, but as of right now, it seems like the more likely scenario would be the GFS model, and that's what the National Hurricane Center is forecasting with this storm. Taking a look at its forecast track, you see that the National Hurricane Center is leaning a little bit more to the GFS model track, taking it more towards the Gulf of Mexico. However, the cone of uncertainty also extends just east along the east coast of Florida, so we need to keep in mind. And you see it's expected to maintain hurricane status until I'd say right around Sunday night, where it does weaken to a tropical storm as a result of land interaction and moves northward into Florida right around Tuesday to Wednesday. So, and in terms of my forecasted track and strength of this storm, I'm expecting this strengthen into 85 miles per hour by tonight, and possibly Saturday we will see that continue, and then I expect it to weaken back into tropical storm size once it passes over Cuba thanks to land interaction. But I do expect a very strong tropical storm to impact Florida at this time. So at Florida, I'd say prepare, because I think it's more likely than not you will receive impacts from this. It's better to be safe than sorry to prepare early. So if you live along the coast, make sure to take precaution, because it's still going to be a strong tropical storm. And you guys also might be asking, well, could this be an East Coaster? Because you see Wednesday night, the storm will extend into the East Coast and move further northward. Well, there's still a lot of uncertainty regarding the forecast. We have to wait and see, because there's a lot of factors. We need to take a look at the wind shear, the amount of land interaction this will face, because that'll be another major important. And we also need to look at baroclinic influences, because that could strengthen the storm even if it's not necessarily tropical. So the East Coast might at least want to be aware of this, especially closer to the Carolinas, because it seems like the general direction this storm wants to go is further northward up along the East Coast. So at least be aware of it for the East Coast, for people along the East Coast further northward. But yeah, guys, I guess that's it for this video. I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. I hope you guys have a good day.